Today, Stoke-on-Trent's largest hotel is being taken over or franchised by the Hilton Group. We already knew that Hilton was opening a hotel on the Smithfield site in Hanley. It's been confirmed today, though, that it'll take over the Moat house on Festival Park. The company is spending more than £6 million refurbishing the Best Western building, which has a lot of history to it. We'll speak to the City Council in a second. First, that history thing. Local historian Fred Hughes joins us on BBC Radio Stoke this afternoon. Fred, what is it about bits of the Moat House Hotel that make it so significant?
Well, the most important thing about it, Stuart, is the presence, of course, of Wedgwood's Etruria Hall, which sits alongside. It's the first set of buildings that you meet. So if you're going to the Moat House entrance, it's on the left-hand side, and you'll see this wonderful Georgian mansion with its two side houses next to it, either side of it. And that's a striking building because it just suddenly looms up right in the middle of what was once a heavy industrial area. So that's what makes it a great historical presence, a great two-building, of course.
And which of the Wedgwoods lived there?
Well, Josiah Wedgwood built it. This man was just a genius. He'd really taken a cottage industry in Stoke-on-Trent, in the six towns of Stoke-on-Trent, very unimportantly, in the middle of the 1700s. And he, first of all, thought, well, I'm in the middle of the country. How do I get things brought in, and how do I get good exports? The roads were terrible. Every time he took crates of ware to the ports, half of it was broke. So together with James Brindley, the great canal engineer, they devised what they called then the Grand Trunk Canal, which is the Trent and Mersey Canal, which really links the North Sea with the Irish Sea. Just then he thought, well, okay, I'll build my house on it because right next to my factory, it's going to really boost my trade up. That is genius. He wasn't just a great potter. The man was a visionary as far as business was concerned. And I always rate him, to be quite honest with you, when they bring out these tables, who's the greatest Englishman, if you like. And I always say Josiah Wedgwood must feature in the top 10.
You would hope so, wouldn't you? More recent history, I suppose, is the Garden Festival. It's not a million miles from the Garden Festival site, is it?
Well, that's right. But just before the Garden Festival, it's important to note, of course, the Wedgwoods effectively left there at the very beginning of the 1800s. They moved eventually to, they were pretty much scattered, but the second Wedgwood, he owned Mayor Hall. So they started to live out of towns. But you could see what was happening. Wedgwood had created this massive industry, and by the time of the 1830s, he died. The Wedgwoods had moved out of there. They kept the factory there, but they moved the house out of there. A variety of things happened, and eventually, with so much industry, it was owned by British Steel. First went to the Granville steel manufacturers, and then British Steel had their head offices there. Can you imagine that building surrounded by infinite noise of Shelton Bar? There it was, stuck in the middle, and the British Steel owned that for quite some time. But you say, quite rightly, 1986 came the Festival of Britain. The whole of that site had been cleared and continued to be cleared. So we've got this, the wonderful Garden Festival. It took over all those slag heaps of coal and ash and unwanted steel and molten metal and turned it into a fabulous garden. A lot of it is still there as well above the retail centre.
If you have a wander up the back of McDonald's, it's fascinating.
It's wonderful, and there's a lot of wildlife there too, which is extraordinary, and lots of things are growing there. So they just planned it really planned it well when they devised the 1986 festival. And of course, then they looked at the Wedgwood House, Etruria Hall. Certainly weren't going to knock it down, and so they just renovated it, and they just made it really super fine with improved the gardens at the back, and the Moat House really did it proud. I mean, it wasn't part of the Moat House, but there was residential, residential rooms there. But I don't think that people had used it for that specific reason. But it made a great visitor centre, and it was a great attraction. And I think probably whoever's going to own that again must take that into account. So it's going to play a big part in the Hilton investment. But
well, let's talk more about that. Fred Hughes, thanks very much for the history. Bang up to date with the leader of Stoke-on-Trent City Council, Councillor Abby Brown now. Two Hiltons in quick succession within sort of a mile of each other. Why have we suddenly become so attractive to the Hilton Group?
Well, I think, as you've heard Fred just very eloquently put it there, this is a site, particularly at Festival Park, and the wider city, really, in a way that's attracted these great iconic brands to want to come and do something special there. And I think, really, as Fred's described, the history of that site coming back to prominence at various times. My feel, of course, is that that's where Stoke is at the moment. Hilton decided to come to us a couple of years ago with the hotel, obviously, that we topped out on Tuesday. And then, of course, today's announcement as well. And for me, I would tongue-in-cheek draw a bit of a parallel there to the story that we've just heard from Fred about Wedgwood and great things happening in Stoke-on-Trent.
Well, how good is it for the area to have a brand like Hilton twice?
I think it's absolutely fantastic. To have Hilton come once, I think, is very powerful within itself. But to have two, I think, sends a really strong message about the city. Obviously, the two hotels are going to be very different. We're going to have a brand new one, and then obviously an older one with this fantastic link to the city, being Etruria Hall, attracting very different markets, but actually complementing each other. I think it's an incredible achievement for us as a city, and something I hope residents feel as proud of as I do.
Are you aware of what the plan is for the hotel? Because it's going to have millions spent on it, and yet the hotel, as I understand it, won't change that much, will it? Well, what's the idea?
I think they're going to put some investment in and start to freshen it up a little bit there. Fred talked again about Etruria Hall, and I've been and had a look round in those bits of it, and hopefully I'd like to think that they're going to bring that bit a bit more to the fore. It is a fantastic asset for the city, and I think there is a real cachet there with saying that you are staying in the home of Josiah Wedgwood, this legendary figure, really, as Fred described, possibly one of the greatest Englishmen alive. So I'm hopeful they're going to invest quite a lot into kind of bringing that whole story alive, and really making it the sort of hotel that that Hilton are famous for.
So you want it to feel like you're in Stoke, because with the best will in the world, one of the reasons people buy into these hotels when they're travelling is you think, it's a Hilton, it's a Travelodge, whichever brand it is, you kind of know what you're going to get wherever you go in the world. You want this one to be quite Stokey, do you?
Well, I think, certainly what I saw at the Garden Inn the other day in the city centre is very much actually that Hilton do want things to be local. One of the things I was most pleased about as I looked around the Garden Inn was that the furniture is actually being made in Stoke. The tiles are coming from Johnson's Tiles, and I know that Hilton are in discussion with local food and beverage manufacturers around the products there. So I think Hilton actually have those qualities at the essence of what they want to do anyway. So, my expectation is that we will see probably that drawn out a little bit more around Etruria Hall than maybe we see at the moment, albeit I know there are touches in there around the brasserie, for example, that's named Josiah's, things like that. I'm hopeful that we will see a bit more of that, of course, tied up, as you say, with that quality of the Hilton brand too.
And so one of the things that always staggers me is when the figures come out for how many visitors Stoke-on-Trent has every year, because I'm here in the city centre 5 days a week at least, and you do see people around, but we do get lots of visitors, don't we?
We do. Over 5 million visitors in 2017, showing a very positive trajectory in terms of increases. And, of course, one of the things that we've really struggled with, and that you and I have spoken about many times before, is actually that we get lots and lots of day visitors, but we really want people to stay. And I think certainly, that's one of the things I talked about the other day with the Garden Inn, that certainly the comments that I get from business who are very excited about Hilton is that they don't want people not to be staying in Stoke. They actually feel quite pained by the fact that people can't stay in Stoke. This is a great city, and to be here all the time gives you a better flavour of what it's like as opposed to coming in from somewhere else. And I think, this underscores that really in a way that Hilton are going to have 2 locations within the city moving forward.
OK, good to talk to you this afternoon. Thanks very much. Leader of Stoke-on-Trent City Council, Conservative Abby Brown, with us on BBC Radio Stoke. In the news, a 73-year-old man